Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. This is a talk called The Team, and it is about the team. But as a specialist in my role, I'm hoping most of you are also considering yourselves as specialists. It's about trying to promote the idea that you are not a lone wolf or siloed to a small department where there's a couple of you wheeled out when there's an emergency. It's about trying to expand you into the one-team mentality. So my name is Ellie Dowsett. I am the Data Protection Officer at Best Companies. And I would like to start with a random fact. Love a fact. And we've got Brian Cox later, so I thought something about stars would be relevant. Hands up if you think there are more stars in the galaxy than trees on the planet. Yep, quite a lot of hands. Well, be very surprised to learn that NASA have estimated that there are between 100 and 400 billion stars in the Milky Way. However, according to a study by Nature magazine, there are over 300 trillion trees on our planet, which is just ridiculous. So there are more trees than stars, apparently. So back to the talk. This is Henry Engelhardt, former CEO and founder of Admiral Insurance. If you're listening carefully to my talk and come and find me on lunch or on break, I'll ask you a question on my talk, and you can take home a book. I've only got a few of them, so you'll have to be quick, but brilliant, brilliant guy. So I'm going to go through some statements that I want you all to think about. The only way someone at a company can advance is to be promoted out of their current role. False. As specialists, we advance within the roles that we are doing. 2, the more senior the role, the more the person in it should be paid and rewarded. We are at a football club. How many players do you know that earn more than the manager is getting earned? It's really important that we see ourselves as specialists in field, and we deserve to get the pay, recognizing what it is that we're trying to do. 3, outstanding individual contributors should be rewarded with management roles. How often do you hear of that happening? You force a specialist into a people management role, they're going to be miserable because they're no longer doing what they love to do. Anyone who stays in the same role for a long period of time and does not advance into management must not be very good. Again, false. And whilst hopefully all of you think, I don't believe any of those facts, you've just said what I think, did your boss think that? Did your boss's boss think that? And part of the issue of that is it's an old-style hierarchical organizational way of thinking. 1900s to 1980s, that was the way of thinking because that's how it worked, top to bottom. Not anymore, though. Since sort of the 1980s onwards, it's become the era of teamwork and the era of the specialist. So, organizations generally hire on these 3 vitals. And this is something that has been authored by Patrick Lencioni, who's a well-known business author. You need to be these 3 things. Hungry. You are all here today to learn. So you are all, I'm sure, very hungry in terms of your learning. You need to be humble. You don't need to think less of yourself. You just need to think of yourself less. So many people suffer from imposter syndrome and don't really think of themselves in the best possible light. And you need to be smart. And this isn't IQ smart, this is EQ smart. You need to have the emotional intelligence to be able to understand people, have empathy. But as a specialist, we have an additional set of ways of thinking. We need to be coaches. We're not trying to teach people the ins and outs of our specialism, but we do need people to understand our processes, our procedures, our policies in a simplified way that they can understand in order to carry out those actions and behaviors that we'd like them to. We need to be connectors. We need to connect what the board wants with everybody else across the organization and to help people work alongside each other in order to get the job done. And we need to be navigators because we're steering the company in the direction it needs to go. We're the ones looking ahead to see what the threat landscape is. that's, not, again, not enough for success. So a lot of you will be time served. You will have gained the knowledge and skills to have earned that badge as a specialist. It's not enough, though. You also need communication skills. You can be 10 out of 10 in your technical ability, but if you haven't got the ability to articulate what it is that you are trying to say, then if you are erming and ahhing, you will look incompetent. But at the same time, if you are sounding too technical, they will instantly switch off and go, that's your role, that's nothing to do with me, that's why you're here. So we do need to find ways of being really good at communicating. We also need to be our own cheerleaders. Too often do we kind of hide away in our rooms and we are only called upon in emergencies. But actually, we need to get out there. We need to start talking to people. We need to show them the value that we offer to the organisation. Because at the end of the day, people buy from people. And everybody across your organisation are your clients. And you need to find ways in order to be able to get on with them. And in sector, we are quite well known for slamming out these statements, you know, calling people stupid, weakest link, ID10T error. Anybody ever found that on the CRM? Yeah, they're calling them an idiot. So if you are telling people these things, do you think they're going to want to be your friend? Are they going to work with you? Would you want somebody with that sort of thinking on your team? We need to change the rhetoric. Let me tell you a story. In the 1970s, some researchers did a study for a new IQ test in a school. And what they did is they rolled in as teachers and want to sit all these children on this IQ test, and what it will do is it will tell you who are your brightest stars in your classrooms and which ones are not so great. Teachers were like, yeah, great, brilliant. So they filled in the tests, they took them away, and instead of actually marking them and actually working out who were great and who were a bit thick, what they did is they just separated the two piles and went, there you go. These ones are your brightest stars. These are the ones that are amazing. These are the ones that are going to be out there. And these ones, well, a bit thick. And then they sat back and watched. And what happened was that the teachers started to spend more time with those that they thought were the bright sparks. They gave them more resources. They spoke to them respectfully. And perhaps unsurprisingly, the ones that had been identified as a bit thick, they didn't give the time of day to. They spoke to them less respectfully. And they didn't give them any resource or anything they needed. So it came to end of year. The children sat their tests. Those that had been identified as bright outperformed any test or any expectation that they had ever previously been given. Those that had been on the thick list underperformed against any test and any expectation previously given. And this is the power of self-belief. You treat people in a way that breeds high expectations of that individual. They believe it, and they will prove you right. They will be better. You treat somebody as if they're thick, they will also prove you right, and they will not perform to their highest performance levels. When we go into our trainings or speaking to the board with our specialist knowledge, I'm sure this is what you all go into. I'm going to talk a bit of cyber. I'm going to talk a bit of data protection. Everybody loves a bit of cyber and a bit of data protection. They're all going to want to listen to what I've got to say. But the reality is, they're looking at us like this, like, another 5 minutes of this. So we need to find ways of speaking their language and engaging what we're trying to say to their priorities. Hopefully most of you have heard of Richard Feynman, really famous guy, great at taking really technical subjects and breaking them down into subjects. I really recommend that you go away and look up the Feynman technique in a better understanding of how to try and deliver messages. But one of the other things that we can do is we can start to get to know our teams, not just those that we work with immediately, but those we work with all year round, across the organisation. Do you know their name? The world of remote working, are you just sending blank emails over to generic mailboxes and never actually getting to know the person on the other end of it? Do you know their partner's name? Do you know if they've got children, their children's names? Do you know the town or the area that they live in so you can have a banter about the commute? Obviously, don't learn their address, that's stalking. Do you know if they've got pets? Pet's name, what month their birthday's in? Do you know where they're going for the next holiday? Everybody loves to talk about their holidays. Or where their last holiday was. What about their priorities? And this doesn't even just have to be a work thing. This can be what do they want to, their priorities in just life generally. And what's their dream? Again, not just necessarily in work, but what are their hopes and dreams? So there's 3 final things I want you to think about. I want you to ask the right questions. Keep things simple and real. And understand the power of clear and regular communication. We have spoken about team players, being a specialist, being your own cheerleader, know your team, self-fulfilling prophecy, or the Pygmalion effect, and how we communicate. My name's Ellie Dowsett, and this has been the team. Thank you very much.
You're another one to come in early, so you've got 5 minutes still.
Oh, if anybody's got any questions?
Well, I have a question. How did you change mindsets in your own organisation? What was the key things that you've done?
It took time. You know, you can't change culture in a day. It does take time. I've been where I am now for 7 years, and it is something that you need to take the time for people to trust you. You're not there to please them. You're not there to tell them off. You're not there judging their homework. You need to find ways of making their priorities your priorities, that you are there to help them and help them grow and do what they need to do, and that by actually doing what you're suggesting they do, it's actually helping them in the long run.
And I think I have one more question, if that's okay. We see the rise of the insider threat. You talked about that self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of how people are treated, how they are valued or not valued in the organisation, and that often becomes a tipping point for many people in the organisation. I don't care anymore, don't care about your processes, and then we have the super malicious users, insiders, who absolutely do understand the processes and everything else. So do you have any thoughts around how we can deal with that insider threat, how we can change mindsets from that perspective?
Yeah, I think generally people care about what they do. Ultimately. And if they are tasked with doing something and they can be sold it in the fact this is part of what you do, then they will do it. And if you sell it in a way in terms of meeting that expectation and setting the standard of what the belief is that you're trying to portray, they will follow it. Those who don't, they're in the wrong job. They're either bored, they're unfulfilled, they're undervalued, they're not seeing the bigger picture. They need their people managers to get involved in order to try and help them. What is their goal? What is it they're trying to achieve? Do they need training? Do they need not just more training on data protection, as in training to become a specialist or training in something else? Or, it's usually time for a change. That's basically what it comes down to.
Thanks, Ellie.